Tengo conmigo un libro, una novela que se llama Llámame por tu nombre, de un autor que nació en Alejandría, en Egipto, y que es pues un hombre de la cultura universal. Su lengua materna es el francés, sus abuelos hablaban en ladino, que es una forma del español, trabaja en idioma inglés, y bueno, pues sus libros, la verdad es que se han traducido a muchos idiomas de nuestro planeta. Es un libro, Llámame por tu nombre, de una gran sensibilidad. Vamos a hacer esta conversación, tratamos un par de idiomas, decidimos hacer la conversación en inglés porque es precisamente el idioma en el que él trabaja. André Asiman, thank you very much for being with us. Llámame por tu nombre, call me by your name. At first I didn't know what that meant until I realized that is a kind of endearment, it's a kind of way of inviting someone to really love you. Tell me, first of all, how does the title evolve, and how did you come up with that title?
It comes in a moment when the two men are having sex. And at some point...
Elio and Oliver.
Elio and Oliver, very good. And what happens is that at some point of, let's say, the most passionate moment, one says to the other, call me by your name. In other words, call me with your own name and I will call you with my name.
Rather than mine.
Rather than mine. In other words, our identities have become so fused together that we have become each other. We are intimate. It's the ultimate form, at least verbally, of a form of personal intimacy with someone else, which I think is, there's nothing that compares to a moment of such powerful intimacy between two individuals. There's nothing else besides that.
This is a love story between two young men.
Yes.
Tell us how they meet and how a friendship evolves into love.
Well, what happens is that every year in the father's house, the father has this big house at the beach in northern Italy, almost on the border of France, which is very beautiful.
Elio's father.
Elio's father, yes. And every year he's a scholar, and every year he invites for 6 weeks a young scholar to finish his work, and at the same time to give him a hand in his own correspondence and his own work. And of course what happens is that Elio, who's 17, and Oliver, who's 24, they basically live in the same house. And at first the relationship is kind of chilly because Elio certainly feels very intimidated, and the other one is almost arrogant in his behavior. So there's nothing happening between the two, but gradually Elio realizes that he's very attracted to Oliver and accepts the fact that he's attracted. There's no attempt to diminish the attraction or to deny it. He just totally understands that he's attracted and he wants to sleep with Oliver. That's the ultimate goal of the whole thing. And we don't know where Oliver stands because the whole book is told from the perspective of Elio. Eventually it happens at some point, basically Elio says something totally unrelated to what they're talking about, and Oliver picks up on the subcurrent of what's going on and responds equally evasively, and Elio speaks evasively as well, until they understand what they're really talking about is about the fact that they're both terribly attracted to each other.
What's the family context? How does the family take it?
Well, the family does not know, or you don't know that the family doesn't know. Eventually, the father will tell the son, I know exactly what was happening, and the son says, oh, we had a beautiful friendship. He says, no, you had more than just a friendship. And essentially what the father is doing is helping Elio confront the fact with him that they had a relationship. And he says, look, now that Oliver has left us, because Oliver has gone back to the United States, he says, you have to accept that this is going to be difficult for you. And by the way, don't deny it, don't fight it, don't try to stifle it, nurture it, and eventually you'll be a better person for that. And he says, by the way, I never had what you have, and I envy you for having it.
They say that when love is young and short, it becomes a lot more powerful. That seems to be what you're describing here in Llámame por tu nombre.
Is love young? I think that love is the same whether it's young or old or very old. I don't think it changes. What changes is the perception of what an older person has. An older person knows the milestones, the signposts, knows where this is going. Whereas a young person doesn't know where it's going. So as far as time is concerned, young people don't have a sense of time. Old people say, well, this can last another month or so, and then it's over. It might last a week. and then it's over. As we age, we know that things have a time limit.
How did the story came into your mind, and how did you start writing it and developing it?
I started writing it on the spur of the moment because I was going to be in Italy, and what happened is that year...
Do you live in Italy?
No, but we go to Italy every year because I lived in Italy as a young man, and I love Italy, and so every year we rent a house in Italy and we go there for 2 weeks. And this year we were not going to go, so I was very frustrated. So I went to the computer and I started writing about a description. Italy, a house in Italy by the beach, ideally wonderful, sort of inspired by Monet's paintings. And eventually I said, okay, now we have to have a romance. And I was going to stop writing, but I kept writing, and I was consumed by it. And then when I decided to make it same-sex relationship, it just totally consumed me, and I went with it, and I didn't stop until I finished.
How long did it take you to write it?
3 months and a half.
Well, it's a very short time for a novel.
Because I think I was consumed more than anything. I couldn't stop writing it. It was writing itself.
This novel has been very successful. It has been translated into Spanish, of course, by Alfaguara. Were you surprised at the reception that this novel would have?
Yes, of course. I didn't expect anything like that. I expected a novel to be published. I was already lucky that it was published. And then...
Because it's a relatively simple love story, just very well told. It's very subtle in how it handles the love affair and the friendship.
Yeah, well, it's subtle because you see what happens from the internal point of view of Elio's perspective. In other words, you only know what he's doubting, what he's fearing, what he's insecure about, and every single emotion. And people will write to me saying, this is exactly me. Because whenever we are attracted to someone, we feel that there's a whole discourse going inside of us that we know nothing about. Very few writers take the time to analyze how inhibited someone can be vis-a-vis the other person that they desire.
We like to think that we are in advanced societies and that we understand and tolerate everything, or that we accept everyone's love, but there continue to be resistances to same-sex love. Did you encounter that with your novel? Did you encounter that with your readers?
Never. Not once, not once. I think everybody totally accepted the novel, and it's ironically because I would say that more than 60% of the readers are heterosexual, and they feel, they cry, they feel attracted, they find themselves moved in a direction that I, as an author, a heterosexual author, never felt that I could go there, but everybody goes, and they all say, I identify completely with the insecurities.
Your readers cried. Did you cry when you were writing the novel at one point?
No.
No, never.
No.
You don't get so involved with your characters?
I do get involved in certain moments. At certain moments I get, of course you have to be tugged into it, but I didn't get moved that much. In fact, when I saw the film, I could hear people crying in the cinema. I wasn't crying, maybe because I knew where the story ended, but I didn't feel the call to be that emotionally involved.
Is it true that when you see a novel you've written on the screen, you feel that it has been taken away from you, and that you feel that, like, it's different and that it's strange?
No, I was very happy. I love the film as it is. Of course, there were moments when I said, I don't believe they're going to say this. Yes, they are going to say this because you wrote it. So I was very happy, and I was particularly gratified to know that the most important passages were taken from the book into the film, word for word.
Andrea, tell me, how come, a nice Latino boy who was born in Alexandria and who speaks French at first and then starts using English. How come you ended up using English for writing?
Because my father was a bit of a snob. So all the family had always gone to French schools. In Turkey, where he comes from, and in Egypt, everybody went to French schools. So he said, I want to do it differently. I'll put him in a British school. So he put me in an English school where English was a dominant language.
In Alexandria?
In Alexandria. And I went to British schools and then to American schools until I finished high school, which meant that I was totally unable to study in Italy or in France, because I just didn't have the training.
Didn't have the language yet?
Yes, I had the languages, but I didn't have the training that goes. So
where did you go to school?
I went to America. I applied to the cheapest college I could because we had no money any longer. And I went to a school that charged $30 a semester.
Yeah.
And it was Lehman College in the Bronx in New York City. And they took me, and I went there for 4 years, after which I went to Harvard.
And you survived?
I
You
saw
know,
it
4
was
years
one-
in the Bronx?
No, but the Bronx was different in those days. It was
Okay.
totally sort of, there were a lot of Italians, a lot of Jews, a lot of Irish and Greeks. And I loved it. I did like it. And then eventually I went and did graduate work.
Yeah, then you went to Harvard.
I went to Harvard. Which was
Literature?
literature, yes, comparative literature. And I loved that, although I also had moments of absolutely hating it. And I always wanted to be a writer, but I felt that the only way to write was to be able to teach at the same time, which proved quite wise as a decision. But it took me many years to be able to find a job where I taught full-time and could sort of earn my keep, and at the same time be able to find the time to write.
Where did you taught? Where were you
I
teaching?
taught at Princeton for
Okay,
quite a
wow,
few
it's a
years.
very good school.
Yeah, it was a very good school. And then eventually I went to Bard College, and then and finally I'm still at the Graduate Center of the City University of New York, which is a wonderful place for me because essentially I can do my writing and still teach and still train people to become PhD students.
Do you write every day? Do you write all the time? Or because, I mean, you do have teaching duties, and I assume you have to also conduct you know, graduate students and whatnot with their thesis.
Their
and-
dissertations takes a lot of time.
I know.
I steal time. People think that I have a method for writing. I don't. I basically, whenever I have a few hours, I will write. I will sit down and write. I do nothing else but write and teach.
I do want to thank you, André Asiman. I hope I'm pronouncing the name
Perfect,
correctly.
perfect.
The name of, el nombre de la novela es Llámame por tu nombre, lo publica Editorial Alfaguara. I haven't read it through, but believe me, you know, from what I understand, it's one of the best books that we've reviewed this year.
Terrific. I'm very happy
Thank
to
you
hear
very
that.
much,
Thank
André.
you so much.
Y a usted, amigo televidente, que hace posible este programa, se lo agradezco también. Antes de irme, este corazón que tengo aquí conmigo es una caja con incrustaciones de concha de abulón, orgullo de mi país. Eso es todo por hoy. Nos vemos la próxima.